Let's go through the production grade setup of Oracle 26ai 2-node rack using Red Hat Enterprise Linux 9.7 with AD integration and without using ASM lib packages. Now, if you notice here, I said production grade setup. What do I mean by that? Basically, we will be using AD authentication. We will be using UDEV rules. We'll be using multipathing. But this particular setup is as good as setting this in a production environment. And I can assure you one thing, that this particular setup, we will not ignore any warnings. Everything, all the checks will be passed. Whatever is required by the rack, all those checks will be passed flawlessly. Now, let me also assure you, if you follow this particular tutorial step by step, then there is this 99% of the guarantee that it will work in your environment. And why do I say that it will not work for 1%? And that is because the fact is, like, there can be so many things that can go wrong in this particular tutorial. This particular tutorial will be lengthy because we are going to see many things in this particular tutorial. Now, before I proceed, let me make a kind request. If you do like the videos that I'm uploading on my channel, do hit the subscribe button. That will motivate me to record further videos. With that being said, let's proceed. This particular tutorial is divided into multiple parts. When I say multiple parts, basically all of those parts in single video. So we will be covering each and every section mentioned here in this particular single video. Now, if you know these particular steps, like if you know how to install Red Hat Enterprise Linux, or if you know how to install Windows Server 2025, you can skip that particular step and you can go to the next step. But there are so many things that we will be covering in this particular tutorial. So let's go through. We'll go through the overview, how to install Windows Server 2025, and we'll configure that as a domain controller. We'll be installing Red Hat Enterprise Linux 9.7, which will be used as a rack node. We'll be cloning the nodes for rack cluster. We'll be setting up the shared disk. We'll be installing the grid home, and we'll be creating the cluster. We'll be creating the SM disk for the data file. We'll be installing the database home, and we'll be creating the database. Now, the softwares which are required here is Oracle 26ai pre-install RPM, Oracle Grid Home, and Oracle Database Home. Apart from that, you need the Windows Server, which you can download from the Microsoft website, and Red Hat Enterprise Linux, which you can download from the Red Hat website. Now, if you want me to show you the links for this, basically to get the pre-install RPM, all that you have to do is, let me open the browser, and all that you have to do is say download Oracle 26ai free, and this particular link, if you take this particular link, and here under this, if you go to the download the Linux install file, and since we are doing this on a Red Hat 9 machine, you get this particular link. This particular link is a pre-RPM. Now, if you want to get the Linux AI Linux downloads, and what we need only two software for this, and that is Oracle Database 26ai on Linux. If I say this, then we will get the corresponding links, and here we got Oracle AI Database 26 for Linux, and we are interested in only two software from this link. One is the DB Home, one is the Grid Home. So these are the two softwares. Once you download this particular software, we are ready to proceed. There is absolutely nothing else that you need, and you need VirtualBox as well. So let's go through the overview. So we will be building a domain controller using Windows Server 2025. We'll be building the virtual machine using Red Hat Enterprise Linux 9.7. Allocate at least 8 GB RAM per node. Allocate at least 12 GB of swap to avoid swap warning. Set up networking in such a way that we have one private IP which will be used for interconnect and ASM, one public IP. Make sure to have IP come online automatically. You'll come to know what that means. We'll be setting up the etc host, disabling firewall, disabling Hawaii, disabling SE Linux, setting up the NTP crony. We'll be creating necessary users. Oracle and Grid will be setting the SSH between Oracle user. All let Oracle do it. You'll come to know what I meant by that. Set SSH between Grid user. All let Oracle do it. Create necessary directories for installation of Grid Home and Oracle Home. Install Oracle 26ai pre-install, and we saw from where to download. Set kernel parameters, or basically let Oracle do it. So when you run this particular package, it will also set the kernel parameters. Clone the machine, set up the shared storage. I did not mention one more disk here. We'll be also setting up the FRA as well. So let's set the FRA. We'll create the ASM disk. Then we will be unzipping the grid software on node 1, only on node 1, unzipping the database software on node 1, only on node 1, install CVU disk optionally run cluster verification utility, grid home, and if you want, you can run the runcluvfy to see what if any of the checks fails. Then you will be running the, and again this is optional. If you don't want to do that, that's fine, but in production do not skip this. In production do not skip this. Run the gridSetup.sh as grid user to on the node 1 only to create the cluster. Run runInstaller as Oracle user to install the database home only on node 1. Set the ASM disk for the data. Run DBCA as Oracle user to create the database. So these are the things. So I am tired to go through all of this particular. I'm tired to go through these steps. And let me tell you one thing. When you try to set up a rack, there can be so many things that can go wrong. So you need to be making sure that you follow the steps in correct order. Now that we have understood, let's see how the IP configuration looks like. So if you notice here, this is basically except for the private IP, which is 192.168.0, everything else, the public IP, the virtual IP, the scan IP is in 192.168.1. Rest all IPs are in this particular subnet. So on what basis do I choose this? So this particular is basically my router's home address. So if I open my machine and if I say IP config and if I say find str IP, you can see that my IP address is 192.168.1, and this particular IP address is what I will be using. This particular range is what. And if I search for, let's say, if I say search for 192, then you can see my default gateway. This is my router's home address. So whatever is in your router's home address or whatever is your IP config IP address, make sure to set the public IP to this range. So here you can see the public IP, virtual IP is matching to 192.168.1. Now, there are 3 machines that I'll be using, and here I made a mistake. This should be 2025, so I'll be using 2025. So here basically we got 192.168.1.109, which will be 109 will be IP for the domain controller. So 1.101 and 0.101, one that will be 2 NICs. NIC stand for network interface cards. There will be 2 NICs for each machine. For the domain controller, that will be 2 NICs. For host 1, that will be 2 NICs, and host 2, that will be 2 NICs. One NIC will be in the bridged mode, another in the internal mode. The bridged mode is the one which will be used as a public IP, internal will be used as a private IP. So this is how my IP configuration looks like. So let's proceed with the installation of our domain controller. Now, basically we have to install the domain controller, and we also have to install the rack node 1. Now what I'll do is, like, to save the time, I'm going to start installing the domain controller, and at the same time I'll also start installing the rack node 1, because otherwise basically if I wait for the domain controller to finish installing and then start installing the rack node 1, it's going to take time. So let's go through it together. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to launch the VirtualBox, and let's say machine new, and I'll say Win25 DC, whatever name you want to give. So you can give, so it has chosen this as this one, so I'm going to change it to Windows Server 2025, and then here we will choose a virtual RAM. Probably give, maybe if you have 4 GB, if you have less RAM, you can give 4 GB as well. Let me give 8192, and number of CPUs, let me give 4 here, and we will specify the virtual disk. And this virtual disk, let's say I'll give this as a disk 1, and I'll give this as close to 120 GB. That's all we are going to do. So now if I go to the machine, let's do some more settings in that particular machine. So I'll go to the features, and I'll say bidirectional, share clipboard bidirectional, system 8192, processor 4, display 128 MB, storage we have already chosen this, And what we are going to do, I'm going to attach the disk. So let's go and locate the disk where we have kept. So Windows Server 2025. So we have attached that particular disk. Network, we are going to have two network. Remember I said two network, one bridged and one internal network. So we are going to attach two networks. First network is bridged. Second network is, I'll say enable, and then I'll say go for internal. So bridged adapter, internal. We don't need 3 and 4. We just need two networks, 1 and 2. Shared folders. I don't need a shared folder for the Windows 2025 DC, so I'm not going to touch the shared folder. So that's all good that's all good for the And what I'm also going to do is I'm going to go here and I'll say PAEX, and that's fine, which is actually not required. That's fine. So what the next part is, so this is the template for Windows 2025 DC. So let's go ahead and start that particular machine and give it a few minutes for it to launch. So let's go through these steps. Language to install, time and currency format. If you want to change it as per your install Windows Server. I agree, everything will be deleted, which is fine. Next, you can choose the standard edition or you can choose the data. This one, I'll go with the standard and desktop. I want the desktop version. Click on next. Accept the license. Searching for the disk. We will go with that 120 GB disk that we selected. Next. And install Windows Server 2025 standard evaluation desktop. Keep nothing. Perfectly fine. And it has started installing. So the installation of Windows Server 2025 has started, which will take some time. While the install of Windows Server 2025 is happening, let me go back and let's go ahead and do the next part, which is installation of Red Hat Enterprise Linux 10.7. Now, we have to go through multiple steps for installation of Red Hat Enterprise Linux 9.7. So let's go through that particular step, and we will be going through n number of steps. So we'll create a gold image, and that particular gold image will clone into two nodes. And I'll tell you why we will be creating the gold image. If something goes wrong, you can always use the gold image and you can clone from the gold image. So let's go ahead and let's again say VM, and we'll say RHEL 907 gold image, whatever name you want to give, that's completely your choice. We'll choose the virtual hard drive here, and we will give, if you have less RAM, you can give 6 GB, but 8 GB is recommended. We'll go with 4 CPUs. Virtual disk will go with the 120 GB disk, and probably anything else we want. We don't want anything else. If you want to choose which Red Hat version, you can specify that it is the Red Hat 9. Let's click on finish. Now we will do the similar settings here as well. So let's go to the general features. Will enable the shared clipboard, bidirectional system, floppy, we don't need it, processor 4, and this is all good. Display, we'll change it to 128 MB. Storage, we have already chosen 120 GB disk. We will attach the Red Hat Enterprise Linux 907, and network, we will again do two networks here, bridge adapter, and enable the second network, and we'll say internal network. We don't need adapter 3, we don't need adapter 4. Shared folder, definitely we need the shared folder, and the reason is like we can copy the software directly from the Windows machine. We don't have to copy it from so that is the reason. We don't have to SCP, etc., and that's all good. So let's keep this and let's verify. Yes, we got 120 GB disk, 8 GB RAM, 4 processors, 2 networks, bridge adapter, internal network, shared folders 1. Looks like everything is looking good. Let's go ahead and start this machine as well. While that is doing, it's still getting installed, so let it wait for the installation. And then here we will be, once the installation is done, we have to do so many things. But before we start installing, now let me say don't start again. And what I'll press I'll press I. So let me say do not capture, and let's say I, which will say it will go to the install. So I said I, or you can use the mouse as well. Install Red Hat Enterprise Linux 9.7. I pressed enter. And again, let me tell you, team, if you know how to install the Windows Server 2025 or how to install the Red Hat Enterprise Linux 9.7, you can skip these particular steps. Now, to save my time, I'm doing this parallelly. Otherwise, I'll have to wait for the Windows server to install, and then I have to start with the Red Hat Enterprise Linux 9.7. And let's go through installation of both together. So give it a few minutes. So we are presented with this particular link. We will choose the language. So let's choose English. Let's go with English language, and United States, that's fine. If you want to change based on your preference, you can change your language. We'll go through the sections. So United States, time and date, that's fine. Root account, we will uncheck that and we'll give here, and I'm going to give a password as password. And if you want to see the password, you can see it's literally password here. So I'm giving a simple password. Again, we have to accept because this is a very simple password. So I'm going to say done. User creation, if you want to create a user, I'm going to create a user called D. Basically, I'll not use this. So D for delete. We can delete this user at a later point in time, but I'm just going to, again, I said password, literally password, and we are not going to use that user. So here only two things I did: root password and user creation. Then here I'm going to choose server with GUI. So all options I'm going to skip, and here I'm going to go with server with GUI, and I'm going to choose only one package from the top section, and from the down section I'm going to choose multiple legacy Unix compatibility, development tools, graphical administration tools, headless management, RPM development tools. So from the top, I only selected one package, which is network file system client. And from the down, I selected 5 packages: legacy Unix, development tools, graphical, headless, and RPM. So let's click on done. That's all good. Installation destination automatic partition selected. If you want to keep that as it is, that's your choice. However, we will change a little bit. So let's go with the custom. Let's say done. And then we'll change this to standard partition. Let's say click here to create them automatically, which will create the layout, which we are going to change. So let's change this. We don't need 40 GB for home. So let's change it to 30 GB. So that's changed. Let's change the swap to 12 GB. We have reduced the home, so we should have extra space that we changed it to. And now we will change this to, we have 7 GB left, so we'll change it to 100, but it will change to 77 automatically because there is no 100 GB left. So you can see it changed to 77 GB. If you want to create another partition such as U01 etc. for your Oracle home, you can go ahead and create it. You can reduce the Oracle, you can reduce the root mount, and you can create U01 etc. I am not going to go through that complications, so I'll leave that and accept the changes. Kdump, if you are in a production, enable it. I'm not in a production, I'm going to disable it. Network and host name, I'll leave that for now. I'll leave all of that for now. Only one thing that I will do is I'll configure here, and what I'll do, IPv6 I will disable, and IPv4 I'm going to change it to manual, and I'm going to add the 192.168.1.101 and netmask 24 and gateway 192.168.1.1 and save. And this for the second network, I'll enable it, I'll configure it, and I'll just say basically connect automatically, but I'm not going to accept for the IPv6 disabling. I'm not going to do anything. So literally I've not configured any address for second one. If you see here for the second one, I have not even configured I've kept it on automatic. We will do that manually at a later point in time. Only this I have done is IPv6 disabled, and I've turned it on. And for this particular network, only thing that I did is I disabled the IPv6 and IPv4, I changed it to manual. The reason why I did that is because we will be able to access the machine using the putty. If you want to change the host name, you can give the host name now, but we will be doing it at a later point in time. So that's fine. If you want to configure security policy based on your organization, you can do that, but that's all good. So we are now going to go through the begin installation of the Red Hat Enterprise Linux. Now, this particular installation is going to take some time because it's going to actually install close to 1,500 packages based on what we have selected during the installation. And it takes a bit of time. That's why I started it while we were installing the Windows 2025 DC. So now that installation has started, what we are going to do is we are going to configure the Windows 2025 DC. So to save my time, to save your time, we are going to do this parallelly. So let's go ahead and do that. So let me go to the 2025, and if we can see here, it has restarted and it has stuck on this. So let's give a complicated password. It will not take the normal password. So let's go ahead and give a complicated password here. Let's say finish and give it a few minutes. And what it does, let me log into this particular machine and let's enter the password that we gave, a complicated password. It will not take simple password. And what we are going to do, first thing that we are going to do is we are going to do two things. We are going to change the host name and we are going to install the VirtualBox Guest Edition. So give it a few minutes. I'll say required only, accept, and we are inside the Windows Server 2022. Now, let me don't show this message again. That's all good. What I'm going to do, I'm going to do something. I don't like this in the center. So I'm going to change it to left and I will say don't combine, and that's all good. So I said left. I don't know why it did not take it. So and I don't need search box. I'll change it to high, and we said center. It did not take it. That's all good. So now what we will be doing is we will be doing two things. So let's go to and let's click on properties, and let's say rename this PC, and we will give name as Win25DC. Again, that's your choice, completely your choice, whatever name you want to give. I'm just giving Win25DC. It will ask for a reboot, which we will not do at now. We will do some more settings and then we will go for the reboot. So it says reboot, but we are going to say restart later. We are going to do some more settings. So let's go to the network and internet options, and we are going to change here. We will see what this particular adapter is. So we need to identify whether this is basically this is the first adapter or second adapter. The first adapter becomes the public adapter. So let's go ahead and disable it, and let's see where it got disconnected. And I believe this one. So this is your public. So it got not connected. So I'm going to do something here. I'm going to rename this, and this is your public network. So I'm going to save that. So I know which network is which, and I'm going to rename this. This is a private network. And what I'll do is I will set the IP address as well. So I'm going to change the IP address. Basically, we can change the IP address. Maybe when the screen becomes bigger, we will change the IP address. So that is a better choice. So now what I'm going to do, I'm going to insert. So let me eject this particular disk. Let me remove this particular disk, and let's go out and let's see if that particular disk is still present here. So let's go to the storage, and no, it's not present. That is good. So let's go back. Let's say devices, and let's say insert VirtualBox Guest Editions. Let's give it a minute for it to appear here. Sometimes it doesn't appear, and looks like it has appeared. So it will prompt us for auto run. You can see it is prompting us for auto run. So you can say run VirtualBox Guest Editions and give it a few minutes for it to launch. So we are now configuring, and if you want a big path, you can give big path. I don't like big path, so I'm going to shorten it. So let's say VirtualBox Guest Editions, click on next. If you want startup entry, I don't want startup entry. So let's click on install. So give it a few minutes for the VirtualBox Guest Editions to be installed in the Windows server. And that's done. Now we are good to reboot this machine. So let's go ahead and restart the machine. Let's wait for the restart to complete. So the reboot has been completed. Let's get inside the machine. We don't need the VirtualBox Guest Edition anymore. Let's remove that particular disk. So we don't need that. So remove disk from this one. Let's get inside the machine. Let's give the complicated password, whatever we gave in the beginning. And let's see if this particular screen becomes a little bit bigger. Basically, after installation, it should become bigger. Give it a few minutes for it to load completely. And let's try one more time. And I believe it's still loading. So give it one more try, maybe. No, I would wait for it to completely load. Probably it's not yet loaded. What I'm trying to do here is like I want it to become big, which is not happening right now. So It will definitely, it should happen. So let's give a try one more time. Yes, looks like it will do now. Yes, that's all good. So now what I'm going to do, so now the screen looks bigger. So let's go ahead and do this network settings. So we are going to actually go to the first network. This is, I thought I renamed this, but it did not, probably got renamed. So this is your public, which is not connected. Let's go ahead and change the IP address, and instead of automatic, we'll go with manual IPv4, and I'll say 192.168.1.109. Subnet mask is 255.255.255.0, gateway 192.168.1.1, and preferred DNS, you can either give the same or you can give 127.0.0.1. Let's save that. And what we will do, we will basically do the same thing. So this is your public IP, and let's do the same thing here as well. IP assignment, let's again go for manual IPv4 only, and we will choose 0.109. Subnet mask is again 255.255.255.0. No gateway, only IP, only gateway for one. Preferred DNS is again will give 127. You can copy paste the same. You can either give the same or we can give 127.0.0.1, and let's save that. So now if I go back and let's do command prompt. Let's launch the command prompt, and what we have here, let's see the host name. This host name will be Win25DC, and let's see our IP config, and let's see how our IP looks like. So looks like the second IP, because we never turned it on. Let's turn it on and let's say clear. And we have, so basically we have IPv6 address. That's all good. So let's do one thing. Let's say, so let's do something. Let's launch, we'll type R and we'll say ncpa.cpl, and we will go here into private, and we will uncheck this IPv6, click on OK, and we'll go to the public and we'll uncheck this IPv6, click on OK. Let's disable that and enable it. Let's disable it and enable it, and then we will do the IP config one more time, and let's see what we have got. And I'm thought I should get both the network adapter, but for whatever reason, yeah, I got 192.168.0.109 without gateway, 1.109 with gateway. So we got two IPs here, etc. And let's actually see one more thing. Let's go to here, go to IPv4, go to here, and you can see DNS server 127.0 for the private IP. So for the private this, and for the public IP, we should have a gateway. So let's take a look. So we have a gateway and we have got the DNS server. So DNS server is matching. So that's all good. Now what we are going to do, we are going to configure this particular machine as a domain controller. To do that, we have set the IP address. We have set the subnet mask, default gateway only for the public IP, not for the private IP. Remember, for the private IP, I did not set it. If you want to see it one more time, you can see for the private IP, I did not set the default gateway. So what we are going to do, we are going to, and the DNS is same for both. You can either keep this as a DNS or you can keep 127, both is completely fine. So what we are going to do, we are going to change we have already changed the host name. We have two adapters, that's all done. So now we are going to set up this machine as a domain controller. To do that, what we need to do, we need to install the Active Directory services. And we will be also using this particular machine as a file server. So our shared storage for the ASM, the data disk, OCR disk, your FRA will be coming from the domain controller. So we will be configuring this particular machine as the domain services and as the SCSI. So we can install one by one or we can install both together. So let's go ahead and install both together. So let's go ahead and do server manager. Let's go to the server manager and give it a few minutes for it to launch. And we are going to click on add roles and features. Let me take it in the center. Let's say next, role based, next, select server and Win25DC, click on next. We are going to choose Active Directory domain services, one, add features. And then we are going to go here, file and storage, expand this, and SCSI target, add features. So only two features, Active Directory domain services, and from the second, file and storage, SCSI target server. So these are the only two features that I have selected. Click on next, click on next, click on next. If required, restart the machine, click on yes. If required, let it reboot, and click on install. So the installation of the two rows, Active Directory domain services and the file server, SCSI target server, is right now in progress on your Windows Server 2025 domain controller. Now, while this is happening, let's see, it is requesting us for the reboot, but I do not want to, now we are at the stage where we have to follow the steps in order. So I'm not going to jump here and there. So let's finish the domain controller and let's go to the Linux servers. So the installation has been completed and it says configuration required, installation succeeded on Windows 2025. So let's close this, and you can see here we got a icon. And if you click on this particular icon, it says promote this server to domain controller. Promote this server to domain controller. This particular icon basically allows us to promote this server to domain controller. Let's click on that. Let's make it in the center. And what we are going to say, add new forest, and I'm going to say db.com. I'm going to say db.com, whatever name, this is completely your choice, whatever name you want to give. This becomes your domain name. So because I'm a database guy, I'm going to choose db.com. Give it a few minutes. If you want to change it to Windows Server 2026, it's 2016, there is only 2016 and 2000. If you want to change it to 2016, you can. I'll keep it 2025. Now, before I proceed, you can do this on Windows Server 2022 as well. I chose the latest version, which is available. Give a complicated password here. Let's give a complicated, so a simple password will not work. So let's give complicated password here. Let's click on next. We will not check that. NetBIOS name, it will automatically populate to the DB. So let's give it a few minutes for it to populate. And this is automatically populated. So if you want, let me see if I can change it, but let's keep it as DB, and let's give it a next. And the locations, and if you want to change it, you can, but let's keep it as this one. And this is what it's going to do. So it's going to basically configure this server as a first Active Directory domain controller in a new forest with a domain name of db.com and with the functional level of Windows Server 2025. If you want to change something, go back, click previous, go back, change it. Or if you are quite okay with what it's doing, click on next. And it's going to do the prerequisite checks. Give it a few minutes for the prerequisite checks to complete. And we are greeted with the message, all prerequisite checks passed successfully. Click install to begin installation. And let's go ahead and click installation. So what's basically the role? We install the domain controller role. Now this particular server is getting configured as the first domain controller in a new forest called db.com. That's what is happening behind the scene. So let's wait for this particular step to complete. This is a pretty long step. So it's going to take some time because this particular Windows machine is getting converted as a domain controller. So give it a few seconds for it to complete. Till that, we'll pause and come back. So something to notice that once this is installed, it is going to automatically restart automatically. So it's going to do that automatically. We don't have a control. You can see I did not click anything. It went into the restart mode. So basically, once the server has been promoted as a domain controller, it's going to do the restart to do the lot of configuration. So it has to do many configurations. So this particular part does take some time. You need to have patience to convert your Windows machine. And let me repeat one more thing. You can use Windows Server 2022 as well for your domain controller if you want to use that as well. I use the latest one so that when you watch this particular video, probably Windows 2016 or 2022 might be already out of support. So let's wait for it to get configured as a domain controller. Finally, after a long wait, the domain controller has started. Now what we are going to do, actually, we'll just log into this particular machine. However, we will do one more thing, and let me tell you one thing. So let me shut down this machine and I'll tell you why in a minute. So we are going to attach a new disk to this particular machine. So let's wait for this. I'm going to click on shutdown and I'll say probably reconfiguration. So give it a minute for it to shut down. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to go back to the VirtualBox on the settings for Windows 2025 DC. I'm going to go to the storage and I'm going to add a new hard drive. So let's say create, not add, and I'll choose probably, let's see what was the disk name. So the first disk was disk 1. So let's say disk 2, again, whatever name you want to give, and I will give probably 120 GB. And I'll tell you why we are going to use this particular disk. And this particular disk will be used for your ASM data. So this is where we are going to store we are going to create our shared disk. I could have used the C drive, but that's a bad practice. We should not create the data disk on the C drive. That's why I configured a new disk, and that particular disk is what we are attaching here. So let's go ahead and start the Windows 2025 DC once again. Give it a few minutes for it to launch. So the machine has restarted. Let's log in once again. The reason why I want to show you everything that I do. So that's why I make sure that even I show you the login prompt, etc. So that you should not think that I have done something behind the scene. Everything that we do here is, let me tell you one thing, I do not even run a single command when I'm paused this particular video. So let's click on format the disk. Let's say create and format hard disk partitions. And here we are greeted with this, and we are going to choose GPT. MBR is an old format, so we are going to choose GPT. So this is the new 120 GB disk. Let's say new simple volume. Give whatever name you want to give, E drive. So we can give that. That's fine. And we will say this is as an ASM disk. Whatever name you want to give, that's fine. Click on finish. So we have got an ASM disk. Now we are going to do one more thing. So this particular machine is configured as a AD. So if I go to the server manager, let's give it a minute. And if I say tools and Active Directory users and computers, you can see this is our AD with a forestdb.com. So we will do two things here. We'll just create one user, and this particular user will be used as and you can give whatever name. So I'll choose RAC. This particular user will be used to authenticate or join our Linux machine with the AD machine. So RAC, I'll give RAC. Let's say next, user must change. I will say user cannot change, password never expires. Again, that's based on your security policy. I'll give a complicated password. It will not accept simple password. So I'm giving complicated password here. And let's say next, and I'm going to click finish. Once the user has been created, I'm going to do one more thing. I'm going to go back to that same user, the RAC user. I'm going to right click on it, click on the properties, click on the member of, add, and I'll say here domain, check names, and I'm going to add that in a domain admin. So I'm going to add that user into domain user, apply. So let's verify. We created a new user called RAC, and we added that user in domain admin group. So and this particular user will be used to join our Linux machine with the AD. So this particular user will be used. So that's all good. So now we have got, and what we are also going to do is we are now going to set up our shared storage. So let's go to here under the server manager, click on file and storage services, and here under that click on SCSI. So here we don't have any SCSI drive. So what I'm going to do, and if you see here under the ASM, there is no SCSI drive. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to say here we'll create a new. So you can click on this, and then let me minimize this, and you can we'll choose in E drive next, and we'll give name. So this will be our first disk, which is basically, let's say OCR, and we'll give 4 GB disk. So this is your 4 GB disk, and click on next, and we'll choose dynamically expanding, and we'll give size 4 GB. So we have 4 GB disk, and we don't have any existing SCSI target. So we'll create a new SCSI target. Whatever name you want to give, that's your choice. I'll give this name as RAC. Again, that's your choice, completely your choice. And we are going to add here the IP addresses, basically the IP addresses which will be allowed to access this. So the IP addresses of RAC machines here. So the first IP address is 192.168.1.101. The second IP is 192.168.1.102. third IP is 192.168.0.101, and finally fourth IP is 192.161.0. So if I now sort this, you can see I have allowed 4 IPs to access this SCSI initiator. The private IP, which is 0 dot, this is the IP of node 1, this is the IP of node 2, these are the private IPs, this is the IP of node 1, and this is the IP of node 2, these are the public IPs. So I've allowed all 4 IPs. Click on next, and nothing here, click on next, and we are going to create, so basically we are going to create a 4 GB disk with the name of OCR 4 GB, and it's going to be, the RAC is a target, the SCSI target, and then it will be allowed with 4 IP addresses. Let's say create, and it's going to create a new SCSI device for us. Let's go back to the server manager, and you can see we got a 4 GB not connected because absolutely no one has yet connected to that particular machine. So we need, that's only for the OCR, we need some more disks. Let's go ahead and create some more disks. So we are going to create the second disk, and this particular disk, again I'll go here and I'll say basically we'll say ASM data. So I'll say ASM data 1, and let's say next, and I'll give again dynamically expanding, and I'll give size of 20 GB. Click on next, click on, and we'll choose the same SCSI target. Click on next, and let's create. So that's the second one. And what we'll be doing is like we'll be creating one more disk, and that disk will be for our FRA, so fast recovery area, for our archival. So let's click on next, and we'll give this as probably FRA, whatever name you want to give. This is completely your name. So this is your shared storage. So let's give here, and we will give FRA double the data size, so 40 GB. Click on next, we'll choose the same target, and that's all good. So now we have got 3 disks here. So you get 4 GB disk, which is the OCR disk, 20 GB, which is the data disk, FRA, which is 40 GB. And if I go back to our E drive, if I go back to the E drive, here under the E drive, we got automatically this particular folder, and you can see exactly 4 disks. And although I said 4 GB, they are dynamically expanding, which means that only when the RAC starts using this and writing this, they will expand. Till that time, they are the initial size. So they are dynamically expanding this. They are not fully allocated. Now, if you want to fully allocate, you have to choose. If you want to fully allocate, when you create here, let's give E drive, and we'll give, let's say we want to have full disk. And if you want to pre-allocate the disk, then you have to say fixed size, and you have to give the size. So basically, if I give here maybe 10 GB, it's going to take that 10 GB on my disk. So if you want to see that, let me say 1 GB, and I'll say I don't want to do that, because otherwise it will, basically the reason why I don't want to do that is like when I discover it, it will appear. So that's fine. So now that we have got the disk, everything that we wanted to do on a domain controller is done. Everything that we wanted to do on a domain controller is done. So let me repeat what I did. So I actually installed Windows Server 2025. I created 2 adapters, one public, one private. 109 is public, 0.109 is private. Only for the public IP, I set the default gateway. I changed the host name. I set up the machine as a domain controller. I set up the machine as a file server. I created the SCSI devices, 4 GB, 20 GB, and 40 GB for the SRA. And we created a user called RAC as a domain admin. At this moment, everything on the domain controller is done. I believe we have no work to be done on the domain controller. Yes, we have one more work, which is basically setting up the DNS entries, which we will do in a minute. So now that we have finished, let's go back. Let's minimize the domain controller, and we'll come back to that. And we have this waiting. So we have installed this, and it's been waiting for so long. So it's waiting for the reboot. So let's click on the reboot of this particular machine. So give it a few minutes for it to reboot. So once you reboot, you are presented with this particular screen. So we will say not listed, and we'll log in as a root user. And let's enter, and the password was literally password, which I gave in the beginning. And what we are going to do now, and basically we have to do so many settings. So let's go outside, and let's try to connect to this particular machine using putty. And do you remember the IP that we gave? That was 192.168.1.101. If you remember that particular IP, let's go ahead and let's say root and let's say password, and we should be able to get inside the Red Hat machine. So this is your Red Hat 9.7, and if you see the host name, we never gave the host name, so it just took the local IP. And if you say the ifconfig, we have only the first IP, the second IP we did not allocate anything, so we only allocated this IP. So we are now going to actually give a host name. We are going to configure the host name, we are going to configure the IP address, we are going to configure the IP address here. So let's go ahead and do that. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to actually, let me actually do this. Let me see. Yeah, let me set this. And instead of doing that, actually I could do this manually, and I'll show you what exactly this does. But what I'm going to do, I'm going to run this particular command all together so that I don't waste your time, I don't waste my time, and I'll show you what exactly this does. So let me take all of this, and you can see it has changed the host name. And if you notice the host name, and it did not appear, but that's fine. So if you notice, the IP address for the first is 1.101, the IP address for the second is 0.101, and the host name, it did not. Let me see whether I can get the host name, and you can see the host name changed to db1.db.com. So the commands that I ran here is hostname ctl set hostname. So this command set the host name. What it did for the enps03, it set the IP address, which was already set. Then it set the default gateway. It set the DNS address, and it changed it to manual. And for the second network, it only changed the IP address to 0.101 and changed it to manual. That's all it did, and it turned that on, and it basically turned on. So this is the only thing. And if you want to see this, what I did here, let me actually show it to you from inside. So if you go to the screen here, let me close this, and it will not go away. So let's close that and cancel. And what we will do here, if I go here and if I click on wired settings, and if I click on here, so if I go to IPv4, you can see 192.168.1.101, and DNS is 192.168.109, and that particular DNS came from this particular command. So let me show it to you. So this particular command actually added that particular DNS. And if I go to IPv6, I've disabled that during the installation. And let me go to the second network, which is this one, and here it changed the address to 0.101 net mask, no gateway, no DNS, no gateway, only for the first one. IPv6 is disabled. So that's all it did. And one more thing that it did is it changed the host name. So if you click on the host name, it changed it to db1.db.com. Now again, I could have done this one by one, but it is a time consuming, so that's all good. So now what we are going to do, we are going to now do a big thing, and basically that is installing some of the packages. So let me close this, and instead of here, I have set up this automated putty session. So if I click on that, automatically it will connect to the DB1 using the root password. It will connect automatically. So now what we are going to do, we are going to think that this particular machine does not have the access to the internet, and we have not registered with the Red Hat repository, which means that we will not be able to install any packages, but we have the ISO image. So what we are going to do, we are going to create a local repository for this particular machine. So we will be setting up so we have to set the, okay, so we have set the IP address, we have configured the 101. So we will set the, okay, let me do one by one. So let's actually set the etc host file, and this particular machine is your gold image. So if you remember, this is your gold image. We are doing this in a gold image, and this what our target is to make sure that we set maximum things in our gold image. So, and what it means is, like, when we clone, then we have very few work to be done. Now I'm going to explain you this etc host file in a minute. So what I did here, I added, these are the internal entries, I did not touch that. So all that I added is I added the public IP 1.101, private IP 1.102. Sorry, public IP of node 1, public IP of node 2. That's all I added. And I added the IP of the domain controller Win25DC. So I added the IP of domain controller. That's all I did in the etc host. No other IP I added in etc host, because this particular machine will be accessed via the domain controller. So it will pick all the other IPs from the domain controller. Now, basically, skip if this particular machine has internet access, and skip if this particular machine is registered with Red Hat. My machine is not registered with Red Hat, and neither we have the internet access. So let's create a local repository. So what we are going to do, let me actually show it to you something here. If I go to this particular location, which is nothing but your etc yum repo, and if I do ls-l total 0, which means we don't have any repositories. So let's go ahead and create a single file here called media repo, and let's create this entry in that particular media repo. All that we are saying here is like we are saying that your OS, your ISO is your repository. So that's all we are doing. So now let's take that, and you have media repo. Now let's do yum repo list. And basically before doing that, let me actually do one more thing. Let's see if we have got the disk mounted, and let's go to the settings, let's go to the storage, and the disk is not there. So let's go ahead and mount the same disk once again, click OK. And now before I do that, let me actually do one thing. Let me create a directory where we are going to mount that particular disk. So let's say make directory cd-rom. This is where will be our mount point, and let's mount the DVD drive, the ISO image, to that particular mount point that we just created. So you can see disk is been mounted. Now if I go to that location cd-rom, if I go to that particular location, you can see that we got packages base OS. This is your ISO image, this is your Red Hat ISO image. Under that you can see we have the packages, and if I take this, these are the RPM packages. So we have exported our ISO image to our Red Hat server. Now what we are going to do, we will go back and we'll say yum repo list, and we should be able to see we have two repositories, and these repositories are local repositories coming from your ISO image. Now that we have created a local repository, again this step you can skip if a server is connected to the Red Hat, so then it will pick up the packages from the Red Hat directly. So that's why we are doing this. So we are now going to install some of the packages, and these particular packages, some of these particular packages are required for Oracle, and some of these particular packages are required for the guest edition. So what we are going to do, we are going to install these three packages. Now one thing that you will notice that all of these three packages is already been installed, and the reason for that is based on how we selected our operating system. These particular packages will be already installed, and you can see here in a minute you will be able to see no packages got installed. So now that that is done, let's go ahead and install the next set of packages for the Oracle AI pre-install. And this particular package is for your Xconfig. If you want to do the remote display, you need that particular package. So let's take all of this particular package, and let's say cd, let's clear, and let's run all of that. And here you can see it's installing the packages one by one. So give it a few minutes for all the packages to get completed, and the last package, it will be xterm, and that's all good. Now we will be installing some more packages, and this particular packages is for your AD integration. So to integrate your machine with the AD, we are going to install these particular packages. So let's go ahead and install these particular two packages, odd job and the KRB5 workstation. So all good. Now that all the packages have been installed, if we are now going to remove that particular disk, let's go back, and we'll have to give the password. Let's go back and let's remove that particular disk. So let's say go back here, and let's say eject, and we will come out, and let's see we have that particular disk here still. Let's go to the storage, and you can see although we remove that particular disk, inside it's still present. So let's say remove, and what we are going to do, we are going to go back and let's say devices, and let's say insert guest edition CD, and let's see if that disk appears, and it did appear. So what we can do, we can directly click on run, which I'm not going to do. I'm going to show you how. So I'm going to cancel that. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to click on that particular disk, and you can still click the run software here. Or what you can do, you can click open terminal, and you can execute the VirtualBox Linux guest editions. So you can VirtualBox Linux editions, you can run this particular thing. But what I'll do is, instead of doing this from the inside, let me run it from the outside. So let's go to the putty session, and let's minimize everything so that we have a clean screen. CD run media root. Under this you'll find the VirtualBox. So let's say cd vbox, and under this you will find vbox linux edition. This is what we need to install. And why do we install this particular package? This particular package makes our life easier. So this particular package will make this screen slightly bigger. This particular package will allow us to access our local Windows folders within the Linux machine, which means that I don't have to do SCP every time. I don't have to transfer the software such as Oracle software, etc. I can directly access that software from the within the machine. Now, this particular software installation or the guest additions does take some time. Let me pause and come back. So that's done. We will restart this particular machine so that it takes proper setup. But however, what we will do is we will do that at a later point in time. So we have so many things to be done. So let's see if that particular thing has appeared, and you can make it big, and you can see now the screen is pretty big. So we have full screen of our machine. We don't need the VirtualBox guest additions anymore. So let's go ahead and click on that, and let's say eject. So let's remove that particular disk from here. Let's go back and see whether it got removed from here as well. And it has not. So let's remove the disk from here as well. So now that's all good. So what we are going to do now is we are now going to do some more settings before we proceed, before we clone this particular machine. So we are still in the gold image. So we are going to do some more settings, and let's go ahead and do that. So if for some reason once you reboot the machine, if it flickers, and then basically what you can do is in this particular file, you can go and you can disable here. It is commented out. You can uncomment that out and restart your machine, which might stop flickering. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't work. So take it with a, just don't believe that it will always work, but that has worked in my case. So let's go ahead and disable the IPv6. This is not mandatory, but this makes my life easier. So let's go ahead and do that. Let's go to the bottom. This is a syscontrol.conf file. So we are changing this in syscontrol.conf. Again, we will be configuring the huge pages. Now, let me tell you something. To configure the huge pages, you need to run one program which will tell you how much this particular 20. So if you see, I have chosen 2050 as a random value. Now in your environment, you might want to configure this based on the Oracle and the Oracle program. And basically, to do that, we need to have the Oracle database running, etc., etc. So to avoid all of that, and if we don't set these huge pages, then when we run the software, when we install the software, that time it will give us a warning that this particular parameter has not been set. So I'm setting up the random value, but this is not the correct way. You need to run a particular program to estimate what will be your huge pages. So I'm going to do this particular trick, and let's save this. So that's all good. And then we are going to use the sysctl-p to reload that, and you can see that it has been reloaded. And now let's take a look at whether IPs, and we should see that we have only IPv4. We don't have IPv6 for anything. All of our IPs are IPv4, not IPv6. All good. So now at this moment, we are good to disable firewall, good to disable Hawaii, etc. So let's do that all together without wasting time. So I'm going to run that. That's all good. We will disable the SE Linux. And what do I mean by that? So if I open this particular file, let me clear the screen. Let me open that particular file, and you can see SE Linux is enforcing. So what we are going to do, we are going to change it to disable. So let's take this particular command. Let's clear the screen. Let's take here, and we can see SE Linux disabled. So that's good as well. So now we will create the users for our RAC installation, and we will be creating groups such as DBA, OInstall, ASM admin, ASM oper, ASM DBA. The primary group of Oracle and the grid will be OInstall. That will be secondary groups that we will modify, and those secondary group for the Oracle, we will add it into the DBA group, and for the grid, we will add it into DBA, ASM admin, ASM oper, ASM DBA, and then we will set the password, literally the password as password of Oracle, password as password for the grid, and we will be adding OInstall into the etc sudo rule. So let's go ahead and do that together. So instead of doing one by one, let me do it all together so that I don't waste your time, I don't waste my time. So let's take all of that, and that's done. Now if I take a look, let's see whether we have ID Oracle, and we should see that Oracle OInstall, and it is part of the OInstall VirtualBox group and DBA group. And let's see whether we got ID grid. and you can see we got grid, which is primary group is oinstall. We got DBA, ASM admin, ASM opera, ASM DBA. So that looks good. Now it's time to allow the limits in the securitylimits.conf. So let's go ahead and modify our etc securitylimits.conf file. These are the limits for the Oracle user and the grid user. So let's add those limits into this particular file. So let's go ahead and do that. We are almost there. So now before I install this, let me go to this particular directory and let's show you something here. So if you see, I'm inside this particular little directory, and you can see that we have only 25 pwrlimits.conf. We have only one single file. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to go to this particular location, and you remember I actually allowed the shared folder here. I allowed this particular shared folder here, and that is why I can access all of my softwares directly. So this is where I've kept this RPM under this particular location. So let's go to that particular location. And under that, we're going to install the Oracle AI database pre-install, and we'll choose Red Hat 9 package because we are doing this on a Red Hat 9. So let's go ahead and install that particular package. And once that is done, let me go to this particular same location. And now if I do ls-l, you can see we got Oracle AI database pre-install, which was not there. There was only one file. Now there is a second file. And if you open that particular file, you should see that we got the limits for Oracle user. So we got the limits for Oracle user here in this particular file. Now I'm going to do one more thing as well. So let's go back and let's see our cat etc sysctl.conf file. Let's see this particular file, and we can see that these are the kernel parameters which has been set by the Oracle automatically. So we added only these lines. And all of these additional lines has been added by the package that we just installed, and that particular package is our Oracle AI database pre-install package, and that particular package added this kernel parameters. So at this moment, I think we are doing good progress. So now we will be enabling the multipath. So why do we need multipath? Because our disks are shared disk. And why do we need multipath? Because multipath allows us to avoid single point of failure. If you don't do the multipath, then your disks are attached to your OS using single point of failure, single network. We are going to access this. These disks are coming from a storage, which basically storage is on the domain controller, but in your case, it might be SAN storage or something like that. So this particular storage is coming from your network. And if you use only one IP to connect, and if that IP, for some reason, that network switch goes down, or if that IP is not reachable, your storage will not be available. Multipath resolves that particular problem because you have two different paths for the same storage. So we are going to enable the multipath. So let's do that. We have already installed that particular package. Remember, in the beginning, we installed the package, and if I show you the okay, so that particular package we did not install manually, because the way we installed the OS, automatically that particular package got installed. So that's my mistake. Anyway, so we are going to enable the multipath. So let's go ahead and enable the multipath. Let's say cd, let's clear this, and we are going to enable the multipath. So let's go ahead and enable, and we are saying user-friendly names that will allow us to create user-friendly names. And let's enable and restart this so that every time the machine has been restarted, the multipath service starts automatically. It's time to now go ahead and create the directories. Directories are your own, basically that's your own structure, how you want to form your directories. So here I have created U01 app grid and U01 app grid home. So this is your grid, this is your grid home, this is your database app, and this is your database home. And then I gave the grid o-install permission to the grid o-install to the grid home, Oracle o-install to the database, and Oracle o-install, and I gave 777 to the U01 app because it's going to create the Aura inventory in that particular location. So instead of wasting your time, let me run all of this particular command together. And again, let me repeat, I'm doing this on my gold image. As of now, I'm still in my gold image. So you can see I'm still in my gold image. So our aim is to get everything configured at the gold image level. So we created the directories, Oracle o-install, database home, Oracle o-install, grid home, grid install. So that's all good. Now, once that is done, we are going to set up the NTP service, and this NTP service will definitely work. and that's why we are setting it up. That's all good. So now we are all good, and we can shut down the machine, clone the machine. But what I'm going to do some trick here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add below line in Oracle bashrc, and all that it means is basically what this particular thing means is that we are setting the profile in such a way that whenever we connect to the Oracle user, we don't have to run RHEL every time, because that particular variables are already set. So this is a trick. This is not mandatory, but this will save you from a lot of hassle. This will allow you, things become more easier when you set up the profile in bashrc. I'm going to do that. So let's go ahead and edit that particular file. Let's go ahead and let's add these particular variables here. Let's save that. And if you notice, exactly same thing I'm going to do, for the grid bashrc, except for if you see the difference between your grid bashrc and if your home bashrc, Oracle home bashrc, all the lines will match except this Oracle base. In Oracle base, this will refer to the database and database home. Here it will refer to the grid home, grid base. All other lines will exactly match. So let's take that. Let's put it here. And I'm going to do one more trick as well. I'm going to, whatever I added in the grid bashrc, I'm going to do that in the root bashrc as well, so that the root bashrc can run the crsctl commands without setting the RHEL. So let's do that. And let's save that. Let's good. So at this moment, I believe we have done all the changes that we need to do. So let's do one final check. ifconfig. This is one of the most important thing. Let's see ifconfig, and we got 1.101, 0.101, and host is DB1. And if you want to see the etc host, basically it has only the public IP of both the nodes and the domain controller IP. Now let's shut down this particular machine safely, and we are now going to create 2 clones out of this machine. So let's shut down this machine. So that's done. Let's go back to our VirtualBox. Machine is powered off. Let's click on clone. Let's give the first whatever name you want to give. This is completely your choice, whatever name you want to give. So we'll give RACDB1 to, so that we can identify, and we'll give full clone, and we'll say include all network adapter MAC addresses. Click on finish, and if your disk is faster, you can clone together. So let's go ahead and do the second clone and click on finish and wait for the second clone of the machine. We are not going to touch this gold image. This is our safety net. If something goes wrong here, we don't have to do all the things that we have done till now, like installation of operating system, configuring of the IPs, installing of the main packages, etc. So this is your base gold image. If you ever want to start again, you can start from here instead of reinstalling the OS. So I'm going to remove that particular image, not delete it, just remove it, so that we have that image safe in our machine. Again, let me repeat, if something goes wrong, we can take that machine and clone it again. So now basically these particular machines are exactly same machines, and they will have the same host name, IP addresses, MAC addresses. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to go to the node 2, go to the settings, and go to the network. I'm going to change this to probably something here, and I'm going to change the bridge adapter. So now let's verify settings. Let's go to the network 8D. Let's go here. Let's go to the network. 05 looks good. 88. So I think, I do not know whether this 88 matches to the first 88, because remember we had the first 88 as well here. So let's go here, and you can see we had, I don't think so it will match 800272224, but let's do one thing. Let's not take a chance. And what we are going to do, it doesn't match actually, but what we are going to do, we are just going to generate a new one, so that we have unique MAC addresses. Although we change the MAC addresses inside, we change the MAC addresses outside, the IP address, the host name inside the machine is still the same. So because they are the clones. So we need to fix that as well. So what we are going to do, we are now going to start both the machines. So let's go ahead and start both the machines. Give it a few minutes for the machines to start. So both the machines have been started. Now what we are going to do, we are going to go to the second machine. So let's go to the second machine as a root user, and let me do something here. We'll choose the classic, and root password is literally root password is password. And let's launch the terminal. And what we are going to do, let me make it slightly bigger if I can, probably. Let's go to the preferences and let's say unnamed, and let's say font, and let me make it probably 16 or 17. That's all good. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to take the IP address. Remember, we change it on the node 1. I'm going to do the exactly same thing. If I show you the IP address of this host name, it is basically same, and IP address will be also 101. This is the second node. You can see this is the DB2, but it points. And as I told you, these are the clones, so they have the same IP. We changed the MAC address outside, but we did not change inside. So using this particular command, I'm going to change it, and basically it does exactly same thing. So let's go ahead and do the here, paste it, and that's done. Now if I show you the host name, the first command, so let's take let's actually, instead of searching for that, you can see host name has been changed, although it's still DB1 because we did not restart this terminal. So once we restart, it will be showing DB2. So host name has been changed, and IP address also has been changed to your 192.168.1.102. So that's all good. So what we will do, we will go here as well. And what we are going to do, we are just going to turn off the IP network. So we are going to just turn off the IP network and turn it on and off. So because the otherwise it will not, the external IP will not work. So now if I connect, so this is your DB1, and if I connect here, this is your DB2. And for some reason it takes time, which you can ignore. I have this particular problem on my machine where the node 2 always takes some time. Now I need to clear up the profiles. I think there is some mismatch in the profile, which is why it happens, but I never figured out why, and I did not bother to fix that. Okay, anyway, so we got, and you can see here, now if I run host name, you got db1.db2, and if you run host name, you can see db2. And if I run IP address here, and if I run exactly same command here, and now if I put it slightly down, you can see very clearly. So you got db1.db.com, db2.db.com, 1.101, 0.101, 1.102, 0.102. So you should, if you notice something here, for host 1, everything ends with 1. For host 2, everything ends with 2. That's how I have set up my machines. Now, one more thing, if you notice, the font color of host 1 is white font color, and for this it is blue, sky blue, whatever you want to call it. So based on the font color, you can identify whether I'm running a command on node 1 or node 2. At this moment, we are now ready for this particular machines to be joined to the domain. And remember one thing, what all that I did in our etc host is added just 3 entries. One is the 1.101 public IP, private public IP of both the machines, and the public IP of your domain controller. And if I show you here, it will be exactly same because this is a clone, so it should also match. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to now take a look at one file. So let's go ahead and take a look at etcresolve.conf, and this should automatically have 1.109. Do you know why did this entry came here? It is because when we configure the IP, we said the DNS for your IPv4 is this particular DNS, and I can show it to you here as well. So if I go back here, and if I go to the network, and if I click on wired settings, and if I go here, you can see under the IPv4, we have got the DNS here. We have got the DNS here. But we don't have the DNS for the second network. Remember, we have the DNS only for the first. For the second, it is not present. So we configure the DNS, and that DNS got registered in our etcresolve.conf file. So that particular DNS, and exactly same will happen with our node 2 as well. So now if I say RHEL discover db.com, because it is going to search for db.com at this name server. So let's go ahead and search for db.com, RHEL discover. So you can see it discovered that, and that's basically your domain. So it has been able to connect to it has been able to discover our domain. Our machine is still not joined to the domain, and I'm going to show it to you. So let me go to the domain controller, and let's connect to our domain controller, and let's launch tools, Active Directory users and computers. And here under the computers, let me refresh this. And why can't I see the refresh button? So for whatever reason, I can't. Yeah. So refresh. If I refresh this, there is absolutely nothing here. So you can see there is absolutely nothing under the domain controller. So that's completely blank. So what we are going to do now, we are now going to register the node 1 and node 2 with our domain. So that's what we are going to do. To do that, we are going to run this command ADCLI join. Which domain to join? What is the user? Remember, we created a RAC user with the domain admin, and that user we are going to use it here, and which server to connect and LDAP password. So I'm going to take this particular command. Let me go back. Let me actually make it a little bit bigger. Let me clear this particular screen. And let me take that particular command, and it's going to ask for the racdb.com password, and I'm going to give that complicated password for the RAC user. This is the RAC user password, and it basically discovered and added that entry. So that's all good. So now if I go back to the domain controller and do the refresh, we got DB1 in our computer. So the DB1 got added as an Active Directory. Let's do the same thing with the node 2 as well. So exactly same command that we ran here. I'm going to take the same command ADCLI join. I'm going to do that with the node 2. So let's clear the screen. Let's make it, instead of clearing the screen, let me make it a little bit bigger. And I'm going to put exactly same command. It's asked for the RACDB. This is the RAC user domain password. This is the domain password, and that's all good. Now, if I go back to the domain controller and let me do the refresh once again, we got the second node as well. So both the machines have been joined to the domain controller. Now let's go back to, let's do one more thing. Let's go to the DNS, and for some reason, it should auto register with the DNS, but it has not auto registered with the DNS. So you can see it has not created any entry for the DB1 or DB2 in the DNS. So what we are going to do, we are going to trick it, and we are going to create the host A entries. So to do that, I have created. So what it means is, like, I can show it to you. So you can say new host A entry. You can give a name. So let's say RAC, whatever name, and you can give an IP address 192.168.1. Maybe 150. We can do that. And what it does, you can see it creates a host A entry, and that is a time consuming thing. So I don't need this entry. This is just a temporary entry just to show you. So it takes time. So instead of doing that, we need to create multiple host A entries, and I'm going to take all of this. Let me put it in a notepad so that you can see this clearly. Maybe I'll launch a notepad, and this is what I'm doing. So I'm creating a host A entry called DB1 with IP 1.101, DB2 with 102. And if you notice on what basis did I choose these IPs, this is exactly what I showed you in the beginning. This is my IP configuration. So if you remember here, if you remember this, and if you match this particular thing, so the DB1 public IP is 192.168.1.101. For DB2, it is 102. So that's what here. For private, this is 0.101, 0.102. The VIP is 1.111, 112. And scan, there are 3 scan IPs, 121, 122, 123. And we got 121, 122, 123. Now, instead of doing this one by one manually, I'm going to take this particular command, launch the PowerShell, launch it as an administrator, and I'm going to clear the screen, and let me clear this. Let me clear this. I'm going to run all of that together. So let's take all of those commands together and paste it here. Paste anyway, and it's going to create those entries one by one in our DNS. Let's verify. Let's do the refresh. And we can see we got the scan IP 121, 122, 123. We got the, let me do something like this. We got the DB1 private IPs. We got the 0.101, 0.102. We got the VIPs 11 and 12, and so these are the private. So let's actually, why I thought I can sort it. Yeah, probably I can. Yeah, so this looks good. So we got the private IPs, we got the public IPs, we got the virtual IPs, and we got the scan IPs. So all IPs have been created. I think now we don't have anything to do in our DNS. So let's go back. And now we are at the stage. So the machines have been joined to the domain. So we have cloned. Remember, we cloned this particular machine. So we changed the host name, etc. But what we did not change is the home Oracle bashrc. So that particular files will still refer aura1. So only one thing that we are going to do here in all of this particular file. So this is the second node. So we are going to change it to aura2. Only one change, and I'm going to do a similar change to the grid bashrc as well. And here also plus asm1, I'm going to change it to asm2. And for the third file, I'm going to do, which is the RAC root bashrc, and that also I will change it to asm2. So this is the third file that I'm changing. So let's save that. Now, basically, all the machines have been configured. We configured the IP addresses. All of that has been done. We have already joined the machine to the domain. That's been done. We created the DB entries. That's done. It's time to set up our shared storage. So to set up the shared storage, what we did, remember, if you still remember what we did, because it's a long video. So we created 3 disks. One is 4 GB. The OCR disk, one is SM data 1, 20 GB, which will be our database file. One is FRA 40 GB, which will be our fast recovery area for the archival, etc. So what we are going to do, we are now going to discover that particular portal from node 1 and node 2. So let's go ahead. Let me clear this particular screen. Let me make it both similar so that you can see where am I doing this. Okay. So now what we are going to do, we are going to repeat. So let's close this. We don't need this. So what we are going to do, we are going to use 1.109 is the IP of domain control. That's your SAN storage. So network, that's where your storage, shared storage is present. So that's the IP address, and let's discover. And you can see we got 2 targets. One target is coming from 1.109. Another is coming from 0.109. It's basically the same targets, and those targets are what? And if I run exactly same command on the node 2 as well, we should be able to see both the same targets, the 1.109, 0.109. Now, what we need to do, we have just discovered those targets. We need to log into those targets, and we need to log in both to 1.109 and 0.109. And I have explained this before, but let me explain this. Why am I doing logging twice? Because I'm setting up the multipathing. And multipathing means that this particular shared storage can be accessed via 2 different NIC addresses. So if one of the network adapter is down, the second route is still open. The second route is still open, and you should be, your ASM or your RAC will still be completely working. So to do that, I have set up the 2 networks, and we will be logging to both of these networks. So let's do that one by one. So we will take this particular IP 1.109. So it's exactly same. So from where I got this is basically whatever you got here. So whatever you got here. So this is what is basically here. So if you want, I can replace it. Let me delete it from here. Let me delete it from here, and let me put it here, and let me put it here. And this is basically exactly what is here. So I'm going to do this on both the nodes. So let's take this first one. Let me log in to 1.109, successful. Let me do it from the node 2, successful. Let's do the 0.109, log into the, and log in here, successful. So the disks are visible. Now let's take a look if we have multipathing. Using multipath.ll, let's verify if we got the disks on both the nodes. Let's take a look. We are going to do that here. So you can see we got the disk size 4 GB, yes, size 40 GB, and size 20 GB. So we got MPath B, MPath C. I was expecting basically MPath A, MPath B to be 20 and MPath C to be 40, but it doesn't matter. So if I take the same command here, we should see something similar here as well. So we got MPath A, MPath B. Now remember one thing, don't use these names in your ASM, because once the machine restarts, MPath A becomes MPath B becomes MPath C. So never use these particular names in your ASM configuration. So if I want to show you those disks, basically you can say ls-l, and if you can say dev/mapper. And if I say M, you can see we got MPath A, MPath B, MPath C. And if I run exactly same command on node 2 as well, we got empath A, empath B, and empath C. So if I go back to the previous command, you can see we got 4 GB disk, we got 40 GB disk, we got 20 GB disk. And from where these disks are coming? If you remember, these disks are coming from here. So 4, 20, 40. 4, 20, 40. And they have been connected via two different networks. They have been connected via two different networks. So now what we are going to do, we are going to do a trick, and we are going to edit the etc multipath.conf, and we are going to create an alias into this multipath.conf file. So to do that, what we need is let me do one thing. Let me open Notepad, and I don't need, that's fine. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to take the first disk. Actually, let's take that first disk, and this is your 4 GB disk. So remember that. So let's take that, put it here. This is your 4 GB disk. Then we will take the 20 GB disk. I'll tell you why I'm not taking the B. So let's take the C, which is 20 GB disk. And let's take the now B, which is your 40 GB disk. Let's take this. So the first disk, and I don't need any of this. So the first disk, this particular disk is your 4 GB. We will assign this as a OCR. This is your 20 GB disk, which we will assign as a ASM data. And this is your 40 GB disk, which we will assign as a FRA. So that's the reason why I kept it like this: 4 GB, 20 GB, 40 GB. Now what we are going to do, we are now going to edit a file called multipath.conf. So let's take that particular file, and what we are going to do, we are going to create the alias. And all that I'm doing here is basically whatever output that we got from that particular command, I'm going to put it here. So let's take that here, and let's take that here. And then let's go back. And let's clear this particular screen, and let's edit that particular file. Let's edit that particular file here. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to take this particular entry, go down, and add the multipath.conf. Let me save that. And let me do the same thing on the second node as well. So now, before I reload that, let me show you what I exactly did. So if I now see, you can see this particular disk, but if I do ASM, you can see we don't have anything with ASM. And if I do the same thing on node 1 as well. So if I do this, let me actually do something like this. So if we are getting the empath disk, and let me clear this. We are getting the empath disk, but we are not getting the ASM disk. So if I say ASM, we are not getting the ASM disk here, and we are not getting the ASM disk. Although we modify the multipath.conf. The reason for that is because once we modify that, we need to restart the multipath service so that it rereads that particular file. So I'm going to restart that particular program multipath D. I'm going to restart that. So that's done. I'm going to do it here as well. And now if I say the ASM, I thought that it will work, but let's see why it did not work. Or did I do some kind of mistake? So let's give it a few more seconds for it to probably give it a few more minutes for it to reflect. Maybe it is taking some time. So even after waiting for a few minutes, it's still not working. So I tried multiple times and it's still not working. So even if after restarting, it is still not working. So it looks like there must be some kind of mistake that I must have made. So let's go back to the node 1. And what we are going to do, we are going to take a look at our vi etc multipath.conf file, and we are going to take a look at our here. So we got 5B, EE, 3D, and here 65. So what I did, I copied the file from here instead of copying it from here. So I modified it here, but I did not copy the correct values. So let's fix that particular problem. So what I'm going to do, vi etc multipath.conf, I'm going to delete these entries which are incorrect entries, and that was what caused the problem. So I'm going to delete all of this. I'm going to take this, I'm going to save it here, and I'm going to do exactly same here as well. So let's do maybe 10 DD and maybe 5 DD, and I'm going to add those lines back. So this time I believe it should work. So now what I'm going to do, I'm going to restart. So I think I copied from here, I should have not done it. So let me restart the systemctl and let's see whether it works. And let's take a look at, and we got the ASM data, ASM FRA, ASM. And let's see after restarting on the node 2, did it fix? And it did fix. So my problem was very simple problem. So what I'm trying to say here is like so many things can go wrong. So you need to be careful of what you are doing. And you can see I did a silly mistake in front of you guys. But however, we have corrected that particular mistake. So now that we have fixed that particular program, so now we will be creating the UDEV rules. So what is going to happen is like if when we run the grid setup, it's not going to recognize this particular path. So what we are going to do, we are going to configure the UDEV rules. To do that, we are going to create this particular file. And why is it in capital? So I'm going to create a new file, and that particular file is completely blank. So I'm going to create UDEV files, and what I'll show you what it does. It's pretty simple file. I'm going to show it to you in a minute. I'll do the same thing here. Let me save this and let me take this from here. And let me add those entries here. So now let me actually show you what I did here. So let's go back to the node 1. Let me make it a little bit bigger. What I did, if I actually let me do cat to that particular file so that we can view that particular file. And here, if you notice here, so we created this aliases ASM data 1, ASM FRA, ASM OCR, and that names I added here. So exactly same names I added here, and I'm creating the symbolic link to Oracle ASM. So I'm creating the symbolic link using the etc UDEV rules. So using this particular UDEV rules, and I'm also changing the owner of the disk to grid ASM DBA. So owner of this particular disk will be ASM DBA. Now, from where we created these symbolic links, that symbolic links was created using etc multipath. So from this particular here ASM OCR, so using the WWID, we created the symbolic links, and those symbolic links are now mapped here into ASM rules. So now if I go here and if I run ls-la dev/oracle ASM and star, you can see we don't have any disk. And the reason for that is after modifying the UDEV files, we did not load that particular file. So let's go ahead and reload those rules. And let's trigger the addition of those rules. That's done. And now if I run this, you can see we got the ls-la dev oracle ASM, and we got dev oracle ASM, ASM data 1, ASM FRA, ASM OCR. So we got 3 disks. We need to do exactly same thing on the node 2 as well. So if I run exactly same command here on the node 2, we should see that we don't have any disk, and the reason is exactly those 2 commands that we need to run. So we will be doing exactly same thing. So reload the rules, and we will be adding those devices. So once that is done, now if I take a look, we have those devices. So we were not having any dev Oracle ASM. Now we got the dev Oracle ASM. Again, here also, we were not having any dev Oracle ASM. We got the disk. But one thing that we need to know is whether this particular disk, you can see here, it is root. So let's take a look at the DM. So let's take a look at the DM and find out if the permissions for this particular disk has been changed correctly to grid DBA. And you can see grid ASM DBA. So you can see those disks are owned by grid ASM DBA. So that's all good. And let's verify that same thing on the node 2 as well. And that's all good. So we have changed the ASM ownership to grid ASM DBA. And all of that was done using the UDEV rules. So we created the UDEV rules, and using that UDEV rules, we changed that. So as of now, share storage is also done. We are now ready to install the grid as grid user. Now, before we do that, if you remember, I said something here. we should be running the before running, we should be running the runcluvfy. However, to run the runcluvfy, it needs the SSH access between, it should be run as a grid user and it needs the SSH access, and we have not set up the SSH access. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to do a trick. So let me log in, let me log out as a root. So let's say log, probably I don't know whether I can't see the logout. So let's do one thing. Otherwise what we can do is we will do it from here. So instead of going inside, so let me minimize this. Let me make it slightly bigger, and let's say sudo su minus grid. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to export the display. So let's say export display. I have already launched the xming. So and this particular IP is my, I think 192.160. I think I'm tired. 1.8. Whatever I'm typing, if it doesn't appear, then that means I'm tired. Okay, so export display 192.168.1.8. This is the IP of my Windows machine. So this is the IP of my Windows machine. This is the xming port where it is listening. So what we are going to do, we need to before we do that, we need to unzip that particular grid software, which I have not done. So let's unzip the grid software, and we need to do that using the grid user. Remember, we need to unzip the software. So let's go to this particular location where I kept that particular software, and let's unzip that directly into U01 app grid home. So let's do that and give it a few minutes for it to complete unzipping. So the unzip part has been done. So what we will do, we'll go to this particular location. Sorry, that should be small cd. And under that, we will have a directory called CV. Under that, we will have another directory called RPM, and we will find a utility called CVU QDisk. This particular utility is required for us to run the cluvfy utility. Now, what I'm going to do is, in your production, probably you should run the cluvfy before setting up the grid, but I have to install this particular utility on node 1. I have to transfer this particular file on node 2, install it, and then set up the SSH, etc. So I'm going to skip this particular part, but we are going to do this later, but for now I'm going to skip that. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to go back to the Oracle home. So grid home, not Oracle home. So we are under the grid home. This is the location where we have extracted that particular software. And remember, we only extracted that particular software only on the node 1, not on the node 2. ls minus l head, if you can see, we have done this. And if I go to the node 2 in the same location, you can see we don't have anything. It's total 0 because we have not extracted that particular software into the second home. So whatever we are doing it from the node 1 only. So under this grid home, you should be able to find a software called gridSetup, and that is what we are going to use to configure our cluster. So let's go ahead and run the gridSetup.sh. And what I'm going to do now is basically I'm going to do 2 steps instead of 1. So instead of directly saying configure Oracle grid infrastructure for a new cluster, I'm going to do it in 2 steps. So we are going to set up the software only first, and once the software has been installed, then we'll go ahead and come back and we will configure the cluster. So let's go ahead and set up the software. So we are going to set up the software on node 1, and we are also going to set up the software on node 2. So let's go ahead and add that. And then what I'm going to do, I'm going to set up this SSH connectivity. And remember, in the beginning, I said we have to set up the SSH connectivity between the grid user between node 1 and node 2, but I'm allowing Oracle to do that. So let's give the grid password. So this is the grid user. Let's click on setup. It is going to prompt us that the network speed is not that great because this is a 1 GB line. This is my local laptop. So I'm going to ignore that particular warning. Yes, that is something that I cannot have. I don't have the successfully established passwordless SSH. That's all good. Click on next. And since we have so ASM admin, ASM DBA, and for the OPER, I'm going to choose ASM OPER. So each has got a different group, no warnings at all. U01 app grid, that's your base. U01 app grid home, that's your grid home. Click on next. U01 app inventory, that's your O install. Click on next. Automatically run the configuration scripts. Instead of me wasting time running one by one, I'm going to give the root password so that it runs those scripts automatically. Again, it will prompt us. It's not going to do that without us asking, without asking to us. So give it a few minutes for it to complete the checks. And you can see we have no warning. So if you go back here, you can see succeeded. Let's actually make it bigger. Succeeded, succeeded, succeeded. Everything is succeeded. You can see there is absolutely no failure whatsoever. This is a clean installation, and this is what I was talking about. We will make sure that we have a clean installation without any warnings. Everything should be as good as your production, and that is why when I started this particular tutorial, I said this is a production grade setup where there will be no warnings that we have to accept. We will be making sure that this is exactly as good as your production environment. So you can see that all of them are passed. We don't even have to click on ignore all because that's unchecked. There is nothing to ignore. Click on next, and if everything looks good, obviously it will look good. If you want to save the response file, go ahead and save the response file and click on install, which will start installing the grid home. So what we have done now here is we are just installing the grid software on node 1 and node 2. We are not going to configure the cluster. So I chose this option, set up the software only. The reason is like when we go to the grid setup, it doesn't have to do all of that step because it has already done these particular steps in the beginning. So what this particular does, if you notice here, it configures the local node, it sets up the local node, it copies the grid home. If you remember, I said that particular location on the node 2, it is completely empty. You can see it is completely empty. So what's going to do once it is finished installing the grid home on the node 1, is going to start sending the files onto the second node. So it has reached here. Let's see whether it has appeared. So let's see if, and you can see the files, 0 files, and the files have been started appearing on node 2. So this is on node 2, blue font color. So it's sending the files on node 2. It's going to do this, and then it's going to, when it reaches to run root scripts, it's going to prompt us. I do not want to waste your time, so let me pause and come back. And it says configuration. As I told you, it will ask us, so do you want to run? If I did not give the root password, then I'll have to manually execute those scripts. I wanted to save your time, so I said I'm going to say yes, and this particular done. So what is going to tell us, and read this particular message clearly. So it's saying that the registration of Oracle Grid Infrastructure for cluster was successful. But if you want to configure the cluster, you can see here, to configure the cluster, you need to run. If I take this particular, if it is too small for you, if I take a notepad and if I put it here, then it says that to configure the cluster, you need to run the exactly same. So whatever program we just ran, same program, grid.sh setup from the U01 app grid home is asking us to run that. So that is the second step. So we have successfully installed the grid home, but we have not configured the cluster. Let's go ahead and configure the cluster. So let's close this. Let's relaunch exactly same program from the node 1. Let's click here, and let's give, sorry, basically whatever I typed. So let's clear, and let's take that, and let's run the software once again. Let's close this unwanted. Let's minimize that. Yeah, so it has launched this, and this time we have done this particular part. This time we'll choose configure Oracle Grid Infrastructure for cluster. So this is what we are going to choose. This time click on next, configure cluster to manage Oracle RAC databases. Click on next. And here scan name. Do you remember the scan name that we gave? Okay, it has locked. So the scan name that I gave, if you remember the scan name that I gave in the AD, that was DBScan. If you still remember that, let me show it to you. So if I go to the DNS manager and the scan name that I gave is a DBScan, let me minimize all of, okay, when I minimize everything, okay. So DBScan, so that's the scan name. So 121, 122, 123, so that's the scan name. So that's the scan name that we need to give here. So I'm going to give, if you want to change the cluster name to RAC cluster, that's your choice. If you want to change it to RAC cluster, you can, that's completely your choice. Whatever you want to give, I'll not change it. Let's keep it as it is. So DBScan is the scan name, and that is what we configured here. And then if you have configured something else, you'll have to choose that name. That's all. You can use whatever name you want. That's completely your choice. So let's go ahead, and here virtual host name. Did I give this particular virtual host name? No, I did not give. And if you take a look at our etc host file, is it there in our etc host file? So let's go and do cat etc host. Is it there here? No. From where did it pick up this? It basically got that information from our Active Directory. So if I go here, you can see we got the virtual IP as DB1 VIP. So automatically it picked up. So for the second node as well, so I'm going to add that, take that, put it here, change it to DB2 this time, and change it to DB2 this time. Click on OK, and that's all. So DB1, DB2, DB1, DB2. Let's click on next. And it's going to do some more magic as well. You will see in a minute the magic that it does. And that particular magic is it will automatically choose 192.168.0 as the public IP and 192.168.1 as the private IP. So 192.168.1 as a public IP, 192.168.0 as a private IP. I did not do this. And that is based on how you have configured your network interface. It identifies which IP to use as a public, which IP to use as a private, all looking good. So let's click on next. Can use Oracle Flex ASM for storage. Yes, we are going to use Oracle Flex ASM. Click on next. Here we can't see any disk, so let's click on external. Because why we are choosing external? Because we have not created redundancy, so we don't have the redundancy. Give a name here, but what is the disk here? So what I'm going to do, I'm going to change the discovery path, and I'm going to say dev/ora. Basically we should say Oracle ASM, but I'm tired, I'm lazy, so I'm going to say dev ora, and you can see we got the 3 disks here. So ASM dev Oracle ASM OCR 4 GB disk. That's what I'm going to choose for the OCR. Click on next. Whatever password, if you want to give a complicated password, I'm not going to waste my time giving complicated password if I forget. So password is literally password, doesn't match, but that's fine. We can change it at a later point in time, so that's a big thing. Always we can change the ASM password, and I'm going to, so let me tell you everything. So I'm going to uncheck this, I'm going to do this. There is no enterprise manager, so I'm not going to do that. And I'm going to do here, I'm going to give the root password so that I don't waste my time running the root.sh scripts. If by now you should know, and if you have seen some of my previous videos, you know what scripts we need to run. But if Oracle is ready to run it for us, why to waste our time and manually log in as a root user and then run the root user sh, etc. So let's wait for it to do the pre-checks once again, and it's going to do all of the checks. Now what I'm not going to pause this particular screen, and the reason for that is I want you to make sure that we don't get any warnings, we don't get anything. So it's going to do the NTP check, it's going to check all the packages, it's going to check the permissions, subnets, ASM disk rules, ASM resolve.conf entry, scan name, is going to check everything. And if all of the prerequisites are met, it's going to go to the next section without giving us any warnings or informational messages. And let's give it a minute and find out if we have a success. And yes, we have a success. And if you want to still, if you don't believe me, go back and take a look. Everything is succeeded. And this is the reason why I said that this is your production grade setup, where we have not ignored any warning. We have made sure that everything is clean. It matches what Oracle is expecting us to do. We are doing that. ASM admin group is there. Resolve.conf, we don't have issue. The subnets, we have don't have issue. Scan name, we don't have issue. The grid home, we don't have issue. So looks like all of that is all good. And if you are happy with this, if you want to save the response file, go ahead and save the response file. But if you want to go ahead and install, let's go ahead and install. This particular step is the one which actually is going to configure the OCR disk for us, is going to configure the ASM, and is going to, and you can see it prompted us to run the root script. So let's go ahead and say yes, and it's going to run the root scripts on node 1 and root scripts on node 2. So give it a few minutes for it. Now what I can show you while it's running, let me clear the screen and let me give it a few minutes. I told you I had some issues. So now if I do ps-ef grep for pmon, you can see we don't have a pmon process on node 1. And if I run exactly same command on node 2, we don't have pmon process on node 2. So what is going to do, what this particular setup is going to do for us behind the scene, and if you want to take a look at the details, you can take a look at the details. So what it's going to do for us behind the scene is basically going to configure the ASM for us. It's going to configure the OCR disk for us, and it's going to start the cluster on node 1 and it's going to start the cluster on node 2. So give it a few minutes for it to complete. I do not want to waste your time, so give it a few minutes. So it has completed everything and it's running the cluster verification utility, which potentially means that the cluster is running on both the nodes. So let's verify that. So I'm going to run this and you can see we got plus ASM1 and we should see plus ASM2 on the node 2. So we got the ASM running on node 1, we got ASM2 running on node 2. So our cluster is running. And let's verify if, sorry. And you can see the configuration of Oracle grid infrastructure for a cluster was successful. So we have got no warnings, everything was cleanly installed. So that's all looks good. So let's close this. And let's run only one command just to check something. And we'll say crsctl stat res t. And the reason why that particular command works, and let's see what is online. And we should see most of the services are online. And you can see we have this many services online. So there might be some services which are still offline, which is expected, which is not to be worried. So we got some services which are offline, which is not to be worried. So we have a working cluster here. Now what this particular doesn't do is it doesn't add an entry in etc order tab. So let's add an entry in etc order tab. So let's clear this particular screen. Let's say vi etc order tab, and let's add an entry in etc order tab here, and let's do the same thing on node 2 as well. And let's go down and let's add, but this time it should be node 2. So that's all good. Now so basically we have got a working grid now. So it's now time to move to the next section, which is basically your installing of the database home. But before I do that, let me do something for you guys, and it's not mandatory. You can skip this particular step, but what we are going to do now is we are going to run the cluffy thing. So remember, we are going to do this, and the reason why I did not run it because if I had to do that, I had to struggle a lot. So I skipped that particular part. So under the grid software, so wherever the grid home so from the U01 app grid home. So from this location, so if I clear this here, you should be able to find a utility called runcluvfy, and we are going to run this particular utility. So I've already done that. So we are going to run that, and we are going to say run it on node 1 and node 2. So what it's going to do is going to do all the pre-checks for us, whether everything is matching. So it's going to check the connectivity. It's going to check the ASM OCR. It's going to check the ASM disk. Is going to check the group membership. Is going to check whether the DNS is working. Resolve.conf. All the packages are present. So it's going to check all of that for us. And you can see nothing, if you notice, looks like everything is passed. What I could have done for you guys is output this particular, and we got so only one which is failed, which is completely fine. I was not expecting that, but that's completely fine. So now what we are going to do is we are going to go ahead and install the database home. So let's go ahead and let's close that. So that is how you run the cluffy command. So let's close all of this now. And what we are going to do, we are at the final step where we have to install the Oracle. We have to install the database home. But before I do that, let me actually do one more thing, and I keep forgetting that. So let me go as a grid user, and let me set the 192.168.1.108. I keep forgetting 7.0, and let me run utility called ASMCA. ASMCA stands for ASM Configuration Assistant. Now, I am just going to run this particular utility to show you something. I'm not going to do anything using that particular utility. So give it a, I think it did not, sorry, not 108. It's basically 8. And I think I am tired. So that's why I gave a wrong IP. So give it a few minutes for the ASMCA to launch. And what I'm going to show you how my disk group looks like. So we got only one disk, which is the OECR, which is mounted 2 of 2. We don't have ASM data 1, or we don't have the FRA disk. What we can do, we can create here. You can see we got here, you get 20 GB disk. We can create ASM data. You can create ASM FRA. But instead of you doing this from ASMCA, I'll do it manually. So let's launch one more session. And let's log in as the grid user. And let's launch one more session on the node 2. And let's log in as the, give it a minute. Clear. Let's log in as the grid user on that. So let's clear this and let's clear this. Let's set the environmental variable, not required because everything has been already set. So we don't have to do that, but that's fine. So let's set it here, ASM2. Let's connect as SQL Plus as sysASM on node 1 as a grid user. Let's connect as a SQL Plus SCSM on node 2. So what we are going to do, we are going to create 2 disks for us. So we are going to create 2 disks for us, one for the ASM data and one for the FRA. So we are going to create 2 disks for us. So let's go ahead and create those 2 disks. So to do that, what I'm going to say, I'll show you this particular command. So I'm going to run this particular command. And for whatever reason, matches no disk dev mapper. Okay, so problem is I gave wrong. So the disks are dev/oracle ASM/ASM data 1, and that particular disk got created. And then I'm going to create. And how do you get this particular link? You can see here is basically the discovery string that we have kept. This is the discovery ASM discovery string, and that should match. So that was actually dev oracle ASM. So the next one is your, let's see, ASM FRA. So let's do here ASM FRA, and let's do it here. And again, we got ASM FRA. So why did I give the same name? I should have given ASM FRA and this. So the second disk group got created. So now if I go back here and if I cancel this and if I refresh this, we should be able to see 2 disks here, ASM FRA, ASM data 1. And those disks are only mounted on node 1. And do you know why they are mounted on node 1? Because that's where I created them. So what we are going to do, I can just say mount all, which is going to mount them on both the nodes, but I wanted to show you how to do it from the SQL Plus. So let's go to the second node and let's say mount, and let's take the second disk and let's say mount. So now if I go back and if I refresh, we got 2 disks, one data, one FRA. So we got the FRA disk, we got the data disk. Our work as a grid user is done. Let's go ahead and close all the grid sessions. And what we are going to do now, we are now going to go as a Oracle user. And the first thing that we need to do is we need to unzip the software into the node 1. Again, we have to do this only on node 1. So let's go to that particular location where I've kept that particular software. And then we are going to unzip it directly into U01 app database home. So let's take that and let's put it here. So give it a few minutes, and we are doing this only on node 1. Give it a few minutes for the unzip to complete. So the software has been unzipped only on node 1. Remember, we have to unzip it only on the node 1. So if I go to this is the node 1, and if I show you ls-l head, we can see we got a software here. But if I do the same thing on node 2, then we will not find that particular software. So again, give it a few minutes for the Oracle to launch. Give it a few seconds. I have this particular problem. I need to fix this particular problem. I have never bothered to fix that particular problem. ls minus l, you can see total is equal to 0. So what we are going to do now, we are going to install the software, and whenever we have unzipped that, under that you should find a utility called runInstaller, which we are going to use. So let's go ahead and launch the runInstaller, and we have not set the display again, keep forgetting. So let's say export display is equal to 192.168.1.8.7.0, and now I should be able to run the run installer, and it will launch the database software installation. So give it a few minutes for it to launch. So set up the RHEL software only, click on next. Oracle RHEL cluster database installation, click on next. DB1, DB2, click on next. Slow performance, actually I did something mistake here. Set up the SSH connectivity and give the password of Oracle user. Let's click on setup. It will give us the warning that it is a slow network. I expected. This is my local machine. In your production, you might have 10 GB 25. You will not get this particular warning, and you should not actually, because you should always use high-speed networks. Click on next. Let it wait for all the validations. The Oracle base, Oracle home. So we got everything successful. However, we got one warning which we need to fix. And one of the mistake that I did is I did not add the Oracle user in ASM DBA group. And why do we need that? Because Oracle user needs to access the ASM disk, and Oracle user does not have the access to that particular disk. So what we need to do, it's very simple fix. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to go back to my document, and here, when I added the secondary groups to that particular user, I missed the ASM DBA group. So this is the simple command that I'm going to do. I'm going to run this particular command on node 1 as a root user. We need to run this as a root user. So let's take that, run it on node 1. That's done. Let's close that. Let's go to the node 2. Again, it takes time. I should have done the SSH. I basically give it a few seconds. And that's done. And I'm going to run exactly same command on node 2. And this time again, I'm going to do the check once again. So I'm going to do the check again, and I'm going to see check again. And this time, if I go back, you can see all the checks got succeeded. So if you want to see, only one check failed, which we have fixed just now. And that was my silly mistake that I did not add the Oracle user into ASM DBA group. So that looks good. And we have fixed that particular problem, and we have everything succeeded. So let's go ahead, and if you want to install the DB response file, so this is the DB home, go ahead and save it. And if you are okay, go ahead and install the Oracle database home into your RHEL node. Again, this is going to copy. If remember that we are doing this only on node 1. As of now, on the node 2, that particular location is completely empty. So you can see it is completely empty. What this particular software is going to do for us is going to transfer the software on the node 2, and it's going to copy, it's going to set up that, and it's going to run the root scripts, but it's going to prompt us. So give it a few minutes for this to complete. I'll pause and come back. So it's not completed, but if you see, it has started copying. I think it believed it completed as well. So if you go to this particular location, and remember we had no files here, but now if I do here, you can see we got those files. Total is equal to 0. We got this particular file. So this was done by the Oracle Grid software, and we should be at the last tab, and it says whether do you need to run this particular script as a root. We gave the root password, so we'll click yes, and the registration of Oracle software was completed. At this moment, we are at the last tab, and what we have to do is we have to run the DBCA to create our database. Now, where can we find the DBCA? To go to that, you can. This is the Oracle home or database home. Under that, if you go to the bin, under that you will find utility called DBCA, and you can use that. Or what you can do, because we have already set up the bashrc, you can run the DBCA from anywhere, and that should not matter. So I'm going to just say DBCA, or you can do /DBCA. Both is exactly fine. So let's run it. Run the DBCA, which will create a database for us. We are going to create a RHEL database for us now, and this is our final step. This is the final part of our tutorial. We have done a lot in this particular tutorial, and we have come to this particular end. And I hope that nothing goes wrong while creating the database. If something goes wrong, I'll have to re-record this entire video, which is really frustrating. So Oracle RAC cluster automatic, click on next. Both the nodes, click on next. Again, it's going to do the checks. We'll give the name as Aura, your choice, whatever you want to give. We'll create one PDB called PDB1, click on next. Give it a few minutes for it to initialize the storage. It has automatically, for some reason, it chose the FRA. I believe it chose the biggest disk. I'm not going to choose the FRA, so I'm going to browse and I'm going to choose the ASM data. And then I'm going to, instead of DB unique name, I'll say ORA. And I have unchecked this OMF. You want to keep OMF, that's your choice. I'm not going to choose OMF. I'll say yes. And then next, basically give it a few minutes for it to, it has chosen. We'll choose FRA, we'll enable the archiving because we should enable the archiving, and instead of OCR, we are going to change it to FRA. So we are going to choose FRA. So remember here we use ASM data to store our data disk, and we are choosing the ASM FRA to choose our, and we are configuring the FRA and we are enabling the archiving, and we are choosing ASM FRA, and maximum size we are giving as 15 GB. Or probably if you want to give 20 GB, we have that much, so we can give 20 GB, click on next. And we are not going to check anything. And SGA size, we will just reduce, or PGA, I don't have that much memory. This was 8 GB. If you have more memory, you can allocate more. I'm going to reduce that. Run cluster verification utility periodically, and I'll give the same password for all. So I'm going to say password. And if it's going to do the checks once again, if you want to customize storage location, go ahead and change the log, data files, etc. If you want to change it, you can change it. I'm not going to do that. And if you click on next, it's going to do the checks once again. So all the checks have been passed again. If you want to see those checks, you can see everything succeeded. There is nothing to ignore. All the checks have been succeeded completely. Click on next. And if you're happy, if you want to save the response file, this is the DBCA response file. If you want to save it, go ahead and save it. And if you are ready to create the database, click on finish, which will start creating the database for us. Now, while the database is getting created, let me go to, let's go to the grid. So su minus grid, let's go to the grid user. And let's say, if you want to set the ORA-NV, you can, but it's not required in my case because of the bashrc ASM CMD. Let's do ls minus l. We got 3 disk groups, OCR, FRA, and data. Let's go to our ASM data 1. We should have a directory called Aura. Let's go to that directory, and we should have PDB password, PDB1, PDB seed. So the database looks like the database has started creating the internal folders. So let's see if we got the system file. As of now, no, but recovery manager failed to restore data files. I believe that's basically because of the fact. So do you want to revert this particular option? And I said that, so this is the problem of our FRA. So we created that FRA. So what I'm going to do, I said revert, and I'm not going to waste your time. Let me launch the DBCA once again. And I'm going to uncheck that FRA. And we'll fix that particular problem probably later point in time. So let's give it a few minutes, and we are going to go through the same section again. And as I said that if something goes wrong, to re-record it once again will be really frustrating because we have done so many things in this. So I'm going to ignore that FRA warning for now, and we will see why that failed probably in some other video. So I'm going to ignore that for now, and I'm going to click on next. And what I'm going to do is here, instead of using that, I'm going to use the ASM data, and I'm going to give a different name probably to the directory Aura1, and because probably there might be something here. So, or maybe I'll give Oracle 26ai database name, Oracle 26ai as a database name, and then I'll give here as well Aura 26ai, and I'm going to click on next, and I'm going to do that and give it a few more minutes. And I'm not going to enable the fast recovery area. That's where it failed. Click on next, and here I'll change the PGA to 500 MGB. And believe that's not something that I did wrong. Something is definitely not correct here. Otherwise, everything that we did was perfectly fine. And So let's go ahead and click on password and click on yes and click on next. And it's going to do the checks once again. And if you are okay with this, all of this, click on finish. Now, only thing that I did, all the options, I just changed the database name. And only thing that I did is I basically I removed the FRA option. I hope this time it should work. So this is something very peculiar that it happens with your, the setup might create this kind of situations for you where you are unable to do this. So let's give it a minute and let's see whether it works this time. So it's basically it's a very silly problem. It failed once again. And the reason for that is my disk drive is 130 MB. So I was doing this on a 130 MB disk and it's, you can see it's already red. So that's what it caused. So that's not an FRA issue. I thought it's an FRA issue. So what I'm going to do, I'll have to do it once again, and you might have lost your patience because I'm doing it third time. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to pause the video, I'm going to clean that up and I'm going to set the FRA once again. So give it a few minutes more. So it failed here, and what I'm going to do, I just cleared some space on the E drive where it tries, and I'm going to say retry rather than, and if it doesn't allow me, let's okay. I'll click OK. Do you want to revert? I'm going to say no, and I'm going to, it did not even have the option. So let's launch it one more time, and this time probably I'll choose the FRA again. So it was not an FRA issue. It was a very simple issue that I ran out of the disk. So let's go ahead and do it one more time for the last time and hope it works. And I'm going to pause because basically I'm going to select all of the options. I do not want you to watch this one more time. We have done this twice. I do not want to watch it. So I'm going to pause and configure all of that, and I'll show you the final screen only. So this is how I changed the database name to RA26. I configured the FRA this time again, ASM FRA 10 GB. Basically you should go above 15 GB, but you know that I failed because of the database size, and we have everything is all good. So this time I again chose the FRA. We are going to keep the ASM data 1 and I'm going to click finish. So hopefully this time it doesn't fail. So what I'm going to do now here, let's go back and let's see whether, let's go one by one and let's see whether we got Aura 26. So this is the new database that's getting created. So let's go inside that particular database, and we have PDB1 and PDB6. So this time I hope it doesn't fail because I've cleaned up some space on that particular disk. So let me pause and come back. So the database creation has started, and if you want to take a look at the DBCA log while it is happening, you can you can use the Oracle session and you can do tail -f and you can take a look at what exactly the DBCA is doing. And at the same time, if you want to take a look at the database alert log, which is in the trace directory, you can do that as well. So like if I take a look at here and if I do tail -f and the database alert log, you can see that it's doing this in the background. So you can take a look that it's moving. As you can see, it's moving. And what we can potentially do while it's happening, let me go to the domain controller, and you can see here our ASM data 1 disk is increasing. It has increased to close to 3.28 GB, and this was the reason why it failed before, and because I ran out of the space on this. So let me do the refresh, and it is at 3.28 GB. So what we are going to do is, like, while this is running, it's still going to take some time, but I just unpaused it. So let's go as the grid user, and let's go to our let's say ASM CMD. Sorry, that's the wrong command. Let me clear the screen. ASM CMD, and then if I give you ls, here you should see that we got the tree. And if I go to the ASM data 1 and if I say ls, you can see we got the Oracle. So I chose this name this time. So if I go to this particular location, you can see we should have the data file pdb redo log redo 01 etc etc. So we got all of these particular files. So it's getting created right now. The the database is getting created. Let's see if we have a little bit more. So it was a 328, it has increased to 331. As we speak, it has increased to 331. So the database creation is definitely happening right now in the background. This is 53%, and we should be finally it will create the pluggable database. While it is happening, let's take a look at whether we got a pmon process. So let's say ps-ef grep for pmon, and we should have a pmon process for RHEL 26db1 here. And if I take a look, let's see on the node 2 if we have got, and it's definitely takes time, so give it a few seconds and we'll see the same. And we don't have, because what it's going to do is it's going to create the database on the node 1, and all that it does on the node 2 is register that particular database, and it adds the redo logs, redo threads into the basically it adds the redo threads. So that's all it has to do. That's why we don't have any pmon process on the node 2. However, it will come once it does everything. It will do that. So give it a few more minutes for it to complete. The database creation is happening. This is our last type, which failed 2 times. I wasted your time, but that was unexpected that I ran out of the disk space, but that's all good. We have fixed that particular issue, and the database creation is right now progressing. So finally, we got our RHEL26db. So what we'll do, we'll open the SQL developer, and let's see if we are able to connect the database using the RAC. So let's give any name, whatever name you want to give. So let's say RHEL26db. That's a RAC database. We have not created any user. So let's give sys password. Let's use sysdba, and we are going to use the scan IP 192.168.1.121. This is the first scan IP. We'll give the service name as RHEL26db, and let's see if we are able to do test and success. 121 is working. Let's do 122. It's working, and let's do 123. It's working, and let's do 124. It will not work. We don't have the scan with 124, so it will not work. So let's try 121, which is our original. Let's save that. Let's connect to that particular database. So we are able to connect on the remote. From the remote machine, we have connected to our database, and we are going to run one final check. And that particular final check is basically we are going to just do our $GV instance, $GV database, and we are going to see our database. So we got a database called RHEL26db is the database name, running on node 1, running on node 2, read write db1. One thing that it does not do, let me do this for us. So it does not add an entry. So let's say RHEL26db1. Let me add this entry on the node 1 in the etc RHEL tab. So let's go to the node 1 here, and let's do that same thing on node 2 as well. And what we are going to do, we are going to add that particular entry. Let's before RHEL26db1. So let's add it on node 1, save it, and let's add it on node 2 and save it. And this should be 2. So now that we have, let's open one more final session as Oracle user. Let's set the environmental variable env to, sorry, that was a spelling mistake, RHEL26db1. Let's connect to our database, and we have 26ai, and let's see, select name from select probably, let's do one thing, select open mode from GV database, and we have read write, basically one read write from the node 1, one read write from the second node. And if I do show PDBs, we should have show PDBs, we should have PDB1 in the read write mode. So this is a multi-tenant RAC 23.26 RAC environment, and we were able to set it up using AD, using multipathing, using AD, using no UDEV rules, and we did this on Red Hat Enterprise Linux 9.7. So this is a production grade setup where we were able to install our grid, we were able to install our database home without any warnings. We did face some issues at the end, but that was my silly mistake that I ran out of the disk space. Now, thank you for watching. If you do like this particular video, do hit the like button, do hit the subscribe button. Thank you for watching, and see you in next tutorial. Till then, bye bye.